Hello, welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. So we're up to this period in Standard in Magic, Combo Winter, and we're going to be talking about this deck in Standard. And also to do that, I'm going to be also talking about Extended, which I'll explain a little bit in a moment, what that is if you're not familiar with Extended. The reason why I've done that is because there's better information about the extended version of this deck than there is the standard version. So in just explaining the mechanics of the deck, I'm going to bring up some extended information. So I've got some links to link to in the description because I can't find much online information about the standard version beyond the deck listing. And when I go through the deck itself, I'll be going through the standard version. But when I'm explaining it, I'll be referencing some aspects of the extended version. The core of the deck is very similar, and the key cards. The other thing I'll mention is this is a really interesting period actually to look at standard, and this is where this article is really helpful, because the article actually has demarcations between bannings as well as just stuff rotating. So this period there was quite a bit of bannings going on from when Urza Saga comes in to when Urza's Legacy comes in. So in both instances when those sets come in, there's a follow-up banning as a result. And of course this relates to this term Combo Winter. Interesting deck to look at. So let's dive in. But before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about the term Combo Winter. And I'll read this out actually. So it's a term used to define the general metagame after the release of Urza Saga. Players believe that too many overpowered cards and combos filled all the tournament formats. This moved the DCI to ban a large number of cards in December 98. When that was not effective, more cards were banned in March 1999. And for the first time in history, a Magic card was banned almost immediately after it was released, since it was discovered that the card Memory Jar from the recently released expansion Urza's Legacy, which is obviously after the period we're talking about, threatened to prolong the Combo Winter. The metagame after release of Mirrodin is now sometimes referred to as the second Combo Winter, and of course we'll be getting up to Mirrodin and Mirrodin standard decks sometime in the future, so that's something to watch out for as well. So Pro Tour Rome, why is that important? Well, Pro Tour Rome was an extended tournament, and I know we always talk about standard decks generally here, there's been a few exceptions, but the reason why this is important is there were a lot of versions of this Academy deck in the tournament. Again, if you're not familiar with Extended, I'll include a link. So at that point, Extended, and the term has varied over the years, but when it was founded, Extended included the most recent 3 years of core sets and expansion sets. And along with all promotional cards that were never printed in a set, this accumulated as new sets were released and had several blocks rotate out every 2 to 3 years. And there's a table here that roughly indicates this. So in the early days, there's a lot of stuff being added, but not much coming out the other end. I think it was also called Type 1.5. And I'll include an article about the Extended Academy deck as it was played at Pro Tour Rome in the extended format, so you can understand a bit about the mechanics, because this is the best description of this type of deck that I've seen. So it's a blue-based combo deck, Warp the Metagame. It used Tolarian Academy and Mind Over Matter, together with numerous card draw and artifact mana producing cards to produce a game-winning stroke of genius. So we'll look out for those cards when we go through the deck, the standard version of the deck. So the idea is that you put artifacts into play together with Tolarian Academy to produce large quantities of mana. Mind Over Matter is used to repeatedly untap Academy for more mana. Cards to discard to Mind Over Matter would be drawn via cards like Time Spiral and Windfall, and a self-targeted stroke of genius. Once enough mana was produced, you stroke of genius your opponent, and that way they overdraw their deck, so they draw more cards from their library than they have in their library. Relatively short-lived deck as Mind Over Matter and Windfall would be banned. Now, in its extended version, you have the advantage of a lot of cards, or a number of cards that, or access to a number of cards that obviously wouldn't be legal in standard. And if you look at the extended versions, you'll see that there's a bit more flexibility in the mana base because of that, because you had access to the more powerful dual lands. The artifact package is similar in both decks, and you'll see why. And the basic spells, particularly the blue spells, are the same. And the real difference comes because of the access to, dual lands, which are incredibly powerful. You get access to additional colours in your sideboard. You can play white in the main board, those sort of things. And you can see there's actually 2 decks here listed from the Pro Tour as well. And you can see, further leveraging the access to dual lands that you'd have access to in extended that you wouldn't in standard. So much broader range of colours. So how does this look in standard? Now you can see, as I've said, artifacts, same. We've got Mind Over Matter, Intuition, Stroke of Genius. But you can see quite a different land base because of the fact that you've purely got access to whatever lands or non-basic lands that are around in standard at the time. But you can see key cards like Time Spiral, Windfall, Stroke of Genius are obviously in here, Mind Over Matter, and Tolarian Academy. Sideboard, Capsize, Chill, City of Traitors, Counterspell, Turnaround and Wasteland. And we'll go through this individually if you're not familiar with these cards. So let's start off with the artifact package, because artifacts combine up with Tolarian Academy. So with Tolarian Academy, tap, add blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control. So the idea is you want to get out cheap artifacts. So you can see there's a couple here that are 0 cost, and we got some 1 casting cost and 2 casting cost. And you can see, you've got the full complement apart from the scroll rack, so 4 of each. So Lotus Petal, 0 to cast, tap, sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool, play this ability as a mana source. So of course additionally here, some here you've got a choice. You can use them to fuel, well, fuel's the wrong word, but to synergize with the Tolarian Academy effect. But you can also use them just in their own right as mana sources. We've got Mana Vault. Doesn't untap during your untap phase. At the end of your upkeep, if Mana Vault is tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, 4 untap mana vault at the end of upkeep. Use this ability only during your upkeep. Tap, add 3 colourless mana to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Got Mox Diamond, 0 to cast. When it comes into play, choose and discard a land card or sacrifice Mox Diamond. Tap, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Scroll Rack, 2 to cast. 1 tap, choose any number of cards in your hand and set those cards aside. Put an equal number of cards from the top of your library into your hand and put the cards set aside in this way on top of your library in the order. And then Voltaic Key, 1 to cast, 1 tap, untap target artifact. So the nice thing with these, as long as they're in play, you don't have to do anything with them for them to synergize with Tolarian Academy, because all that's checking for is for each artifact you control. Tap to add blue mana. We have 3 Mind Over Matters, which is our enchantment. Pretty heavy investment here, 2 and 4 blue, but again we have access to a lot of mana. Choose and discard a card, tap or untap target artifact, creature or land. Intuition, 2 and a blue. Search your library for any 3 cards and reveal them to target opponent. He or she chooses one, put that card into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Shuffle your library afterwards. Stroke of Genius, X, 2 and a blue. Target player draws X cards. So this is the card when you have enough mana that you can cast on your opponent to clean out their library. Of course you can use it on yourself at any point in the game to draw cards, get card advantage, draw the cards you need. The land base is 23 land. Ancient Tomb, tap, add 2 colourless mana to your mana pool. Ancient Tomb deals 2 damage to you. There's 12 islands, 4 Tolarian Academies, which we've already looked at, and 3 Wastelands, which can be tapped for colourless mana. Tap, sacrifice Wasteland, destroy target non-basic land. Sorceries, we've got 4 time spirals, 4 and 2 blue. Remove it from the game. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard and hand into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. You untap up to 6 lands. And then Windfall, 2 and a blue. Each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number a player discarded this way. So again, there's ways in which you can leverage these cards to interact in some way with the whatever's being drawn, whatever's being discarded, that sort of thing. So restocking your library, that sort of stuff. In our sideboard, 3 Capsizes, 1 and 2 blue. It's got buyback 3. Return target permanent to owner's hand. So with buyback, you may pay an additional, in this case 3. When you play the spell, if you do, put it into your hand instead of your graveyard as part of the spell's effect. We've got 3 chills, so red spells cost an additional 2 to play. We've got 2 City of Traitors. If you play a land, sacrifice City of Traitors, tap, add 2 colourless mana to your mana pool. We've got 4 Counterspells. We've got 2 Turnabouts, so 2 and 2 blue. Tap or untap all artifacts, creatures, or lands target player controls, and then 1 Wasteland. So you can see some of these just increase the count of cards you've already got in your deck. And these are obviously here to deal with specific matchups in there. Whatever the meta game is, and in this case we're in standard, so the standard meta game. The other deck we looked at was extended, so clearly there's cards in the sideboard there to deal with the extended meta game. Okay, so no deck musings would be complete without just looking and seeing how awesome the basic lands are, and I'm just looking at all of them here. Obviously we're playing islands, so this is the sort of artwork you might see at the time if you happen to actually use that particular set. These have just come out. I do have these. These are, from what I remember, the cards generally are on the slightly more expensive side for basic lands, but lovely artwork. And very strange forest artwork. As well, nothing like anything else, I think. And the same was true of, wasn't it, Mirage, I think, where the forests were quite different than anything. Well, I suppose you could say that actually with all of this it is yeah, thematically just it's really quite unique, a lot of it. But yeah, I find particularly the forests. Look at that. I could just spend all day looking at these. I'm not sure how many of these I've got. I have to go through my basic land box. They will have already featured in a Land Ahoy episode. So if you're interested in seeing them, if indeed I do have them, then that would be probably the very first Land Ahoy episode that I did, actually, I imagine. Okay, so let's go through the rest of the cards in the deck and see, you know, what else similar there's been in Magic over the years. As I've said, this will be all the standard cards we're looking at. Some of these we've seen before, so I'll probably skip over them a little bit quicker. So we've got Ancient Tomb. That was from Tempest. What do we got here? So, 2 colourless mana, your mana pool. Ancient Tomb deals 2 damage to you. So one of these lands that basically, you know, generates a lot more land, a lot more mana than you would usually expect with a land. We've seen this term before, Soul Land, to describe here these lands that, you know, have a way of generating 2 mana, and some of those, there's certain circumstances where that's done. There's also this category which adds multiple mana, which I think we'll look at that one. It's a pain land as well. It's under the ramp category, and it's under the drawback category. Very similar to City of Traitors. But you can see there's an additional downside to City of Traitors, which is when you play another land, sacrifice City of Traitors. And also we've got Temple of the False God, and that crops up a lot in Commander product. So tap, add 2 colourless, activate only if you control 5 or more lands. So it's quite a heavy condition on that. So let's look at this add multiple mana. Now you can see they staple it to quite a number of other things. So I think what we'll do, let's just look at this by type to get a feel for sort of cards that do this. So we'll start off with land, and you can see we've got 62 cards, and this would also include things like, you know, the original Ravnica lands, which when they come online they tap for, you know, 2 colours. You've got mixed bag in here, so you've got things that can be scaled based on things like counters, in the case of City of Shadows. fact, we should add this is first printing, because this gives us a better idea chronologically. So yeah, we've got the Urza's deck, Mishra's Workshop. These are interesting. The ones from Fallen Empires that you have to sack. And then there's this from, was it Alliances, Lake of the Dead. And then stuff like Crystal Vein. So you can see several of these, in order to access the the additional land, the additional mana, you have to sack them. And then the Karoo lands, so you get additional mana beyond one because they have coloured mana and colourless mana. But again, there's a little bit of shenanigans to get that to come online. There's visions there, we've got Weatherlight, lots of interesting stuff around this time. Of course, when I saw the artwork, it also made me think of some of this sort of artwork. But I find this is a really interesting period for Magic in terms of non-basic lands. I'm not sure how many I'm going to be able to feature in the Friday artwork video. We'll see what I've got. Obviously I tend to aim for the slightly more budget friendly stuff, so some of this is quite expensive, but we'll see how we do. But yeah, always fascinating to see how they handle multiple mana. So if we were to just go through this and see, well, what creatures, so if we go type of creature, oops, so 74, so you can see there's a lot of ones here where it's just tapping, might be scaling off of some other cards as well. But I'm sure people recognise a lot of classic Magic cards here that were, if you've ever drafted a particular set, you'll know that often there were certain mana dorks which were able to generate quite a large amount of mana under certain conditions. They're often popular in draft. And it's another one where it's quite a nice little, I've spoken about this before, it is one interesting avenue to go down if you're a bit, strapped for cash, or careful with your money as I am. You can create these little, collections of certain themes. So, stuff like this will be fascinating, all the common ones, all the lower rarity stuff, maybe if you're worried about the budget. So I wondered if there would be any filter ones here, and this is interesting. So you sometimes get a light for light filtering going on some creatures in Magic, but interesting to see this where it's filtering one mana of any colour to the red, green, white. Conflux, interesting set to go looking for EDH stuff. I think find all sorts of goodies in there. I could spend ages just doing on this whole area of adding multiple mana. But let's just try and speed this up a little bit. So artifacts, well, probably recognise a lot of these crop up in commander decks. And again, nice little sort of collection, I think. For whatever, for your budget EDH binder, or just if you like to build decks that don't conform to standard and are just like legacy decks basically. What's this? Ventifact bottle 3 1x per extra. Charge counters. Interesting. It's a talking point. Thrown turbine. On to cast during upkeep, you may add up to 2 colourless mana to your mana pool. This mana cannot be spent to play spells. Okay. So obviously only activate things or filter mana. That's interesting. Thran turbine with, what was it? Not Vine Mystic. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've done artifacts. I imagine this. Okay, enchantment. Yeah, 4 enchantments. I imagine it could be pretty scary on an enchantment. Now, instants, you get a lot of. I was going to say, so that adds multiple mana. Maybe they're all at sorcery speed. Okay. That's interesting. The sort of cards I'm thinking of must be under a different tag then. As I'm thinking of things like some black and red cards, but must be under a different tag. Okay, moving on. Intuition. Search the library for 3 cards and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 1. Put that card into your hand. So this card's come up before in this series. Yeah, fact or fiction. Tutors, yeah, so tutoring to graveyard. So yeah, interesting combination of tutoring and this selection thing. You get to choose one. And your opponent gets to choose. Lotus Petal, yeah, this has come up previously. This was from Tempest. So you sack it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool, and no doubt there's a number of tags here which we've seen before. Was in the Black Lotus. It's ramp, and what's called a mana egg, which we have looked at mana eggs before. So mana rocks that can have to be sacrificed to add mana. They may ramp or merely filter your mana. Eye of Ramos. Wasn't there yeah, so there's that Ramos cycle. So next set on, yeah. Mind over matter. So Exodus this came from. Oh, all sorts of things here. Unique mana cost. That's pretty unique. So you can see the amount of things that it can tap or untap. Artifact, creature or land. So it comes under like multiple different tags. The one I want to look at is Twiddle. Tap or untap something from this card. So when did Twiddle first appear? Here we go. Alpha. Here we've got Puppet Strings. There's Mind Over Matter. Turnabout. As well here. So there's a Saga. We got some twiddly stuff in Macadian Masks. Remember this? Staff of Domination from Fifth Dawn. Interesting card. Although quite high mana costs here. Yeah, we got a little bit of mirrored in twiddling here. That's Kamigawa. This was Cold Snap. Of course, Pestamite. There's Derivi. Twiddlestick Charger in front of the unsets. Oh, and Gandalf the Grey gets up to a bit of twiddling as well. So, of course, what I need to do with these namesake cards is just look and see. One thing I'm curious about is over the years, let me just try and make sure I've got this right here. Yeah, let's get this in ascending order. So clearly, a presence in the core sets. So what do we got? Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. It's collector's edition. Original collector's edition. 4th edition. That's the Black Border version of 4th edition. There's a Renaissance, that was a like aggregate set. I think I tend to call them. Renascimento, was that the Italian one? I could be wrong. Rivals, yeah, that was an interesting box set. Rivals, the introductory 2-player sets that were kicking it out round. 5th edition, 7th edition. That's the by the time you get to 7th edition, they're sort of playing around with these I think promo cards that crop up in certain products. And then we got 8th edition, and then it crops up again in the 30th anniversary edition as well. Mox Diamond, another card that we've looked at before, came out in Stronghold, so still in Standard. It's discard outlet. Comes into play, you have to choose and discard a land card or sacrifice Mox Diamond. Classed as a Moxen, not surprisingly. and those we've looked at before, but let's just revisit this because it is such an iconic set of cards. And fortunately, a type of card that you don't see too often in Magic because because of the power that is associated with it. And I think, as I've said before, it's interesting to see how they try and sort of print a Mox and dial it back in some way. So it's not like one of these. But yeah, you know, like first attempt after the original ones. That was a pretty dangerous thing to do, I suppose. Metalcraft in Scars of Meriton, although I don't know if it causes much problem as the original mirrored in the second Magic Winter. Was it Affinity? So yeah. Wasn't like Metalcraft considered to be sort of a dialed back version of Affinity, I think. Let's just bring up the full artwork. What would be here I don't know if it's going to get this right because some of it's probably not a great way of doing this. Let's just do this in release date order. It's obviously, yeah, eye-wateringly expensive. $70. How much is a Mox Opal now? I think I might have one of these actually. I think I may have opened this. 27. Oh, there we go. Mox Tantalite. That's the cheapest, is it? Yep. Scroll Rack. So yeah, Brainstorm Tag. Any number of cards in your equal number of cards from the top of your library into your hand. Let's see. Top deck manipulation. Okay, so 13 things that are tagged with Brainstorm. So, first one on the list, way back in Legends, Sylvan Library. There's our Brainstorm. Draw 3 cards, then take 2 cards from your hand and put them on top of your library in any order. With Scroll Rack, it's 2 to cast, it's an artifact. 1 tap it, choose any number of cards in your hand and set those cards aside. Put an equal number of cards from the top of the library into your hand and put the cards set aside in this way on top of your library in any order. So interesting way to execute that. Jace, of course, with the Brainstorm ability on it. Also got this Brainstone as well. And it's turned up on a few legendary creatures you can see there. Just a couple. So Conchhorn, 2 to cast, 1 tap, sacrifice Conchhorn, draw 2 cards and put any 1 card from your hand back on top of your library. $4.97 for a Conchhorn. Yeah, Brainstorm, banned in Historic, restricted in Vintage. But still, you know, relatively cheap. And yeah, as you probably realise, that's the first printing. So interesting. Yep. Let me make sure. Yeah, don't need to add that because that defeats the object, obviously. When did they first use this artwork? What's that? That's that dual deck, isn't it? Yeah. Was that the first time they used it? Yeah. Legacy Championship, and it was also in the Vintage Masters edition. Okay, moving on. Stroke of Genius. So yeah, so a major contributor to this deck. What have we got similar? So it's under as a draw tag, not surprisingly. So Blue Sun Zenith. Target player draws X cards, shuffle Blue Sun Zenith into owner's library. Okay, X and 3. So what, that's X and 3 blue as opposed to X and 2 and a blue. When it goes back in the library. Wow. Okay. Brain Geyser. So X and 2 blue. X cards. Worse than Drowning Dreams. What do you get for Drowning Dreams? X and 2 blue, so same cost. Choose one. If you control the commander as you cast this spell, you may choose both. Okay. Oh, it's got a mill on it as well. Wow. Even the score, X and 3 blue. So you can see there's a bit of a, you know, shuffling around here in terms of the cost of this type of card between X and 3 blue and X and 2 and a blue. So let's see if your opponent has drawn 4 or more cards this turn. Genius Mastery, that's another X, 2 and a blue. With an alternative cost. It is at sorcery speed. Transcendent Message. X and 4 blue. And it's got Convoke. So you can use creatures to help cast that. Okay. Obviously if we could go into the draw tag there, but we're going to see lots of cards we've seen before. This is an interesting cycle. Was it first printed in Mirrodin Besieged, funnily enough. And all of these end up back in the owner's library. Time Spiral. So remove it from the game. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard and hand into his or her library and then draw 7 cards. You earn up to 6 left. Wow. You know, you probably gather the cards in Urza Saga were just ludicrously powerful. Oh, Refund. Ritual Untap. Symmetrical Wheel, Symmetrical, untap a land, shares name with set. Restock Aggro. Let's look at Refund. I don't think we've looked at Refund. Get mana or untap lands back. So And where are we seeing that from these 54 cards? What would you say? Interesting. So green, because yeah, basic lands. Some blue. Let's rewind. There's our time spiral. Priest of Gix. Looks like, yeah, a bit of a thing in that block generally. Oh yeah, because this was a real big problem, wasn't it, in the set? And not surprisingly, there's a layoff of it. Oh look, surprise, surprise. It comes back in another form in Mirrodin, or they're not quite the same. Seismic Spike, yeah, Burning Tree Emissary. And this fella. Marut, what do they do? 8 for 7/7, trample. When Marut enters the battlefield, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, create a treasure token for each mana from a treasure spent to cast it. Okay. Wilds of Eldraine. Oh, of course we've got up. This is cool. So we've got stuff from upcoming. Yeah, because this is in the process of being currently spoiled, isn't it? Bargain. You may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. Flying haste. Okay. Tolarian Academy. Banned in Legacy, banned in Commander, banned in Oathbreaker. Or restricted in Vintage. And of course not legal in any other format, so and it's part of the reserve list. Has multiple mana, as we've seen. It's part of a legendary land cycle. Maybe we'll look at that. We'll look at this synergy with artifacts as well, I think. And ramp. So let's just see what this forms part of. So there we go. And you can see the action of these is quite different. So they're all at rare. They're all legendaries. Non-basic lands, but you can see, so the green one scales on creatures, and the black one's interesting in that it adds one colourless mana to your mana pool, and then you sack a creature to get this sort of burst of black mana. The white one scales on enchantments. The red one, again, a bit like the black one, colourless mana, and then 2 in black, tap, Shivan Gourd deals 1 damage to your opponent, so you don't have to sack it though. And then the blue one scales on artifacts. I'm not sure if they'd wanted to make them all like scalable mana, what the black and red would have scaled on. I mean, I suppose, yeah, I'm not sure thematically how that would fit in. I mean, the red one, you could have done, what, maybe instance or sorcery you'd played that turn. I don't know. And the black one, like some sort of damage scaling, maybe. How much damage you done that turn? Or vice, yeah. Similar to red, I suppose. Or how many creatures had been removed. Yeah. Interesting, though. So let us look at the other tag I was curious about, which was synergizing with artifacts, which is probably going to be a ton of thing. I do accept that, but I was curious as to like what was the first time that really happened or is tagged as happening. Oh, twiddle. Yeah, I suppose synergizing is a bit of a interesting word. Look at this. I love how they like squeezing all this stuff like Guardian Beast. Lots of Urzas or something. In Magic. And Vision Charm. So you have Twitch, which is tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land, draw a card. And you have Twiddle, which is caster may tap or untap any one land, creature, or artifact in play. Twitch and Twiddle. Voltaic Key, another untap thing. Probably recognise it that it's similar to Galvanic Key. You can play it anytime you could play an instant. It's 2 to cast and 3 to untap the target artifact. Obviously they dialed back that a bit, I'm assuming, in light of this. Manifold Key, where did that come from? Similar to, so 1, so same casting cost, and it's, yeah, interesting. So this like modality on it. 1 tap, untap another target artifact. 3 tap target artifact, can't be blocked this turn. That's an interesting bit of utility. And yeah, synergy artifacts, again, no surprise to see it tagged as that. And an untapper artifact. So let's have a look at those. See what we've got. Nature's Chosen has come up before. Sands of Time, Mind Over Matter, which we've seen, falls into that category, as does Turnabout. And there's things like these, you know, Clock of Omens, these clocks, Unwinding Clock. Voltaic Servant. Wasteland. And this has definitely come up before, so, you know, all these cards which can destroy other lands, various types of other lands as well. Tectonic Edge, Encroaching Waste, Strip Mine, again over the years attempt to maybe dial back this a little bit. This came from, was it Tempest and Removal, Land Destruction. Yeah, there's loads of cards generally that will do that. And probably recognise things like Acidic Slime, and is it, I'm trying to remember what Molder Beast does, because that'll destroy permanents. You can see there's a number of cards that will deal with lands, either because they destroy lands or they destroy a permanent. And again, it might be certain type of lands. And a number of these sort of land destruction spells we looked at in the No Hand No Land series. There's this old mould. You know, I meant to say mould shambler. I think I said something like moulder beast. Yeah, mould shambler. But only if it's kicked. There's Tech Age. And if you're interested just in the land that do it, yep. See if there's anything new since we last looked. Windfall. Each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of players that a player discarded this way. So let's just see where we are in the grand scheme of things. There we are, Windfall. Turnabout is in our sideboard. Okay, banned, another card. It's banned. Legacy. There's the Saga. Oh dear. So, okay, yeah, another catch-up card. Discard outlet. Players who have less get more, and we've seen this in previous episodes. This sort of rebalancing effects. You know, we've spoken about tithe before. I'm sure land tax has come up, ensnaring bridge. Yeah. We looked at some keepers, I think, in an artwork episode as well. And it could be anything as well, you know, like life is another one, popular one to do that. Land, as we've seen. And another Wilds of Eldraine card. 2 and a white, 2/3 at the beginning of upkeep. If an opponent controls more lands than you, create a treasure token. So yeah, we can see treasure tokens in that set. What I'll do with that set, if you're curious, once it's fully spooled on Scryfall, at that point I'll be starting to put together an episode. And if I can, I'll do what I normally do, which is try and put the episode out at the very least a week before the set is released. But we'll see again. Things have changed slightly with, I think, releases and pre-releases now. So we'll see how that manifests itself in terms of when the last cards get spoiled. But I'm keeping an eye on that. Capsize, which has buyback on it. And yeah, we've looked at Capsize before, I believe. Interesting, yeah, loads of bounce cards in Magic's history. Loads. Chill. Red spells cost an additional 2 to play. So again, something we've seen quite a bit of before, this idea of, you know, cost increases. Something on them makes it more expensive for cards or certain types of card. First seen in Drought. Chill is from 6th edition here. Oh, it's because I'm thinking, no, it was before that. There we go. Forgot that. Sorry, first seen on Gloom. And Chill was in Tempest. First time we saw it. We've got things like High Seas as well. Yep. Forgot to put the is first printing in it. So not Drought, but Gloom. Interesting things like Sphere of Resistance. And then Defense Grid. So 2 to cast. Urza's Legacy, this is from. During each player's turn, spells played by another player cost an additional 3. There's Thalia. What's this from? March of the Machines. City of Traitors. That's multiple mana. Yep, so another Soul Land, which we've looked at already. Counterspell, we've looked at this numerous times. Just see if there's anything interesting here. So yeah, you're probably all familiar with how, you know, over the years these sort of counterspell type cards maybe play around with the cost a little bit, or the type of things that it might target. So you got things like Cancel, which are 1 and 2 blue, and we've got things like Mana Drain. Sort of play now, and then you get this at the beginning of your next main phase. Add an amount of colourless equal to that of the mana spell's mana value. Surprisingly, it's worse than Mana Drain. There's Nullify for creatures or auras, Stoic Rebuttal, Wizard's Retort. Yeah, Exemplary, and yeah, 479 spells that counter stuff. See charts takes a variance of the behaviour, notably Counterspell Soft, which gives a buyout cost as opposed to a hard counterspell. And then finally Turnabout. It's a sideboard card. Taps or untaps a number of things. It's, was under the twiddle category, as we saw. Synergizes with artifacts. Extra untap. What's under that category? Okay, Battle Cry. Mobilize. What have we got else that sort of does that? Hang on. Most important tag here. Reset. Okay. I'm looking to see what cropped up around this period. Okay. Stronghold. Interesting artwork. Of course, yeah, Sideboard Muse. That was from Legions. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. Some old friends here. The Lieges. I love these. It's hybrid mana. 4/4. All green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1 to untap all green and all blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. We've got to look at the Lieges. Okay. Is it going to have the tag in there for that so it's easy to find? Yeah, so this is part of the cycle of the Shadowmoor Liege. So 10 of those. Let's get the originals here. So, yeah, all the 2-colour combinations. So, the commonalities in these is that they all gave +1/+1 to creatures in their appropriate colour ID. But also, you can see they had this sort of additional ability unique to each one. So we've got the black-red one. When it ever becomes the target of a spell or ability opponent controls, that player uses 4 life. This one, red spells, white spells. With red spells, 3 damage to target player. White, you gain 3 life. Trample on that one. Token generation on that one. Some of these you can see as well. It is like colour specific for certain ones, like the additional one ability beyond just the pump abilities. So there's a tap spell with destruction as well. That one's got flying on it. Get red or blue creature cards from your hand into play. There's our Merkfiend, Thistledown Liege, and Wildleaf Liege. So that then begs the question, are there any other lieges? So 16 lieges in total. Beyond those, we've got Gaia's Liege, Liege of the Axe, Liege of the Hallows, Liege of the Tangle, Oath of Lieges, wasn't there some weird mega cycle, was it? No. Looks like maybe there is only 4 of those things. Liege of... Oh, Liege of the Pit I missed, yeah. So 2 green ones. A white and a black. No red, no blue. Excellent. I wonder if there's anything else I want to add on that. Extra untaps. That was the last card we looked at, which was Turnabout. We looked at twiddle effects. Yeah, see these sort of tap, untap spells tick so many boxes under these sort of tag categories. Cool. So that's everything. Well, that was interesting. Loads of really cool stuff there to look at. An interesting deck. Not the sort of deck I'd probably play. I mean, the actual, how it works looks pretty easy in terms of, you've got artifacts synergizing with your Tolarian Academy, generating lots of mana, ultimately so that you can cast a stroke of genius on your opponent and draw their whole library, losing them the game that way. But then all these other cards which benefit from excessive amounts of mana, allowing you to basically stay in the game, not end up losing the game before you get to actually cast your stroke of genius. But it's interesting to look at, isn't it? Because when you look at this, the whole deck, is pretty much, if you're looking here, I don't like some of these blue decks we saw previously when last time we looked at a blue deck. Often because of the time scale involved in getting the combo to go off. What was it, Turbo's V we looked at? There's quite a bit of counter spells packed in there to basically stave off your opponent. Here you can see, all of these cards involve, library manipulation, card draw shenanigans, those sort of things. Tapping, untapping artifacts. So, really much built around the main synergy of the decks, main synergies of the deck. And so any of the more control cards are in the sideboard. So it's like completely dispensing with that, and it's just full on blue artifact combo in this particular iteration of it. As I said, I'll include links to this information because there's a nice explanation there about how it works, and it is important because at that point in time, as I said, although we're looking at a standard deck here, there was this extended Pro Tour in November of '98. So, around this period here. So, and going to be very interesting next week. More bannings as we get Urza's Legacy come in, and completely different list of cards here as well. You can see it's funny, look. So here we've got November to December before we get bannings as a result of Urza's Saga. Here, so what would this be? This would be 2 months. Here it's like 1 month of Urza Legacy being in standard, and then there's more cards banned between here and here. Big list there. And you can see they actually made the decision in March the 1st. That's funny. So they had, there was a month grace period and an emergency announcement as well on Memory Jar. That's so cool. Oh, there's a rules change after that as well. Okay. Oh no, that's when 6th edition came in. Okay, yeah. So you often see that sometimes. Rules changes around the time of core sets is a thing. Maybe we'll cover that in a future episode. Okay, thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.